Yes, Sarah, as you mentioned, Michael Caputo is a longtime political analyst whose career has taken him all over this country, of course, but it's also taken him all over the world. Now, our viewers best know him as the former campaign manager for Republican gubernatorial candidate Carl Palladino. He also worked for the Trump campaign, as we mentioned as well. But it's his time working for a media company in Russia when that company was hired to soften the image of Russian President Vladimir Putin that's landed Caputo back here on Capitol Hill. For at least an hour or two on Friday, he'll be at the center of a congressional investigation into the alleged interference by Russia in the 2016 presidential election. Well, hello, Sarah. And like you mentioned, Michael Caputo, a well-known political operative, went behind closed doors in front of the House Intelligence Committee at about 2 o'clock today. We expected that hearing to last no more than an hour and a half or so, and he is still behind closed doors right now. Obviously, you resigned from the Trump campaign last year, but during that time, were you a part of, or did you see any interference from the Russian government under orders from the Trump campaign or in connection?
No, nothing at all. I mean, nobody even spoke about Russia in the campaign headquarters. I was only asked about my life in Russia once by Donald Trump. That was in 2013, and he asked me what it was like to live there.
What do you say to people who might say, well, it's just too much of a coincidence that this individual who's well-known in politics worked in Russia, worked for a company that worked for Vladimir Putin, and at the same time worked for the Trump campaign? What do you say to people who say, well, there's just enough smoke here, there's got to be something?
Well, I say that this is all about stalling Donald Trump, about tripping up his agenda.
Spectrum News anchor Casey Bortnick is in Washington to cover the testimony of Michael Caputo.
Well, Sarah, as we've been telling you all week, Michael Caputo has had a long and sometimes controversial career as a political operative here in Western New York, and he's well known across New York State for running Carl Palladino's campaign for governor, and he's also served as an advisor to President Trump while he was running for president. But make no mistake about it, Caputo was here today because of his time working in Russia in the 1990s and an accusation made by a California congresswoman. It's a remark Caputo was more than happy to push back against.
Well, they didn't ask me about Jackie Spear. That's why I put it in my opening statement. I think Jackie Spear should have been here. When she brought my wife into this, she started it. I want them to leave my wife alone. I want them to leave me alone.
Now, Caputo did work for a Russian media company who was hired to improve Vladimir Putin's image in the U.S., but Caputo says he left that company to return to the States shortly after. He says he has no love for the Russian president.
If you read anything I've written about Putin, heard anything I've ever said about Russia since I left in 2000, you'd know that I'm not Vladimir Putin's image consultant.
Caputo says soon after the congressman made those remarks back in March, he and his wife started getting threats.
One person twice called and told me he was going to burn my house down with my wife and children inside.
As far as the hearing itself, Caputo's attorney described it as a fishing expedition. 4 congressional members, only 3 asked questions. For Caputo, the answer to the only question that matters is clear.
Nobody ever mentioned the word Russia the entire time I was with the campaign, in the New York State primary, in Trump Tower, and then when I took over the communications division at the Republican National Committee. This, to me, is all a delusion, and it needs to stop.
Now, Caputo's attorney, Dennis Vacco, says he has been contacted by counsel for the U.S. Senate. The Senate, of course, is conducting its own investigation to Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 presidential election. So it's quite possible, Sarah, that we could be right back here again with Michael Caputo being called to testify, this time on the Senate side. But for now, reporting from Washington, D.C., I'm Casey Bortnick for Spectrum News. Sarah, back to you. All right, just in the last hour, the National Weather Service has confirmed a tornado did indeed touch down in southern Erie County on Thursday. State and county emergency officials are taking to the air to assess the damage caused by these storms. Let's give you a live look right now in Hamburg. The Erie County Fairgrounds, we are expecting Governor Cuomo to come to that podium anytime now and speak to the media assembled there. You can kind of see the damage in the background at the Erie County Fairgrounds. Damage caused by that tornado that ripped through our area at about noontime today, a little after noontime, and leaving a lot of damage in its wake. That's just a snapshot of it. Let's show you some video now that we've been showing you all day right here on Spectrum News. It is video from Hamburg. You can see the date and timestamp there, and watch that car in the background lifted off the ground in kind of a circular pattern. The The best evidence we had seen of a tornado touching down, and now the National Weather Service has confirmed it was indeed a tornado. It is windy out here. The rain is coming down, and it's been coming down really in buckets out here. 3:22 this afternoon is when the Buffalo Police Department decided to suspend this search for the day. Well into 50 hours of the search for missing Buffalo police diver Craig Lehner. They will pick the search back up tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning. Early tomorrow morning, they will pick that search up once again, and they will search for that missing diver, Craig Lehner. They've been doing so now since 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon, since we got word that this Buffalo police diver was having some trouble. That's when the search kicked in earnest. We did hear from Lieutenant Ronaldo a little while ago. He talked about what goes in to making that call. What makes you decide to go ahead and call a search? I asked him that earlier today. Here's what he had to say.
It's strictly weather driven. The wind is too great to put a diver on a boat, and the wind is too great to allow the boats the accuracy they need to stay in those grid patterns and conduct sonar and ROV searches. So for today, it was strictly weather driven.
But the Buffalo Police Department having to go ahead and make that difficult vocalization of the announcement this morning that this is now a recovery effort, no longer a rescue effort. They are hoping to bring closure to not only the fellow members of the Buffalo Police Department, but the family members that have been here, remain here, now taking shelter because of these high winds, these high rains out here. And obviously the Buffalo Police Department would like to bring closure not only for their department, but really for the family and most people here in Western New York who've been watching this story so closely. Everyone's kind of been glued to this story, wondering when they will find this missing Buffalo police diver. That's the story out here. Once again, Alex, they suspend the search for the day for missing diver Craig Lehner of the Buffalo Police Department. It will pick back up on Monday morning. Alex, as you can see here, I'm on the other side of the 190. This is as close as Buffalo Police will let us get tonight. They are keeping everyone away from Unity Island. You mentioned the weather there, and it was at 3:30 this afternoon that Buffalo Police decided to call it a day. Lieutenant Jeff Ronaldo telling the media that the wind, the rain, just too great for the divers, too much for the boats on the surface of the water to continue that grid pattern search for the sonar. And it's not just the weather that police are dealing with, it's the emotion and the fatigue, and a tough acknowledgement made today.
Reality is reality.
Even before dive teams re-entered the fast-moving waters of the Niagara early Sunday morning,
Nobody could survive under the water for this amount of time.
those desperately searching for missing Buffalo police officer Craig Lehner were finally saying out loud what they've been thinking for days.
We are confident that he is not washed up on an island where he was able to still survive the dive, and we missed him.
While hope the 34-year-old police officer would be found alive has faded, the determination to bring closure to family, friends, and fellow officers hasn't. But in addition to prayers and hope, this operation has been boosted by manpower. More than 15 different agencies pitching in to help.
Our guys actually called me first to sit there and say, hey, can we go?
10 members of the Rochester Police Department scuba team have experience working in the murky waters of the Genesee River. They've even trained in the same area of the fast-moving Niagara River. And for this team, the search for Lehner,
Unfortunately, we lost a diver in training back in 1984.
is personal.
This really kind of hits home to us, and so that's why our guys said, let's get up there as quick as possible. So we understand completely.
Lehner has been missing since about 1 o'clock in the afternoon Friday. What exactly happened remains unclear. Police say Lehner was attached to a safety cable, and at some point, that cable broke. Police say the most likely explanation is Lehner got caught on debris under the surface. Search is now starting to shift north, where there's hope calmer waters will make things easier for dive teams.
We'll get down to the International Rail Bridge along the wall. Tomorrow we'll be going out from the wall, 50 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet, 200 feet into the water.
Only Mother Nature could force a temporary pause in this search effort. Perhaps a blessing in disguise, as the long hours and emotions of searching for one of their own takes its toll.
The strength of this family is incredible. The mom, the sister, the friends, the family, that's what's driving us.
And that family here today kind of keeping watch, waiting for their loved one to be found. They asked that we not show them on camera. We respected their wishes. The search will continue once again at 7 a.m. right here tomorrow morning. Reporting from Buffalo, Casey Bortnick, Spectrum News. You're watching our extended coverage live right here on Spectrum News. A body has been found. The body of Officer Craig Lehner, been missing for 5 days now. He went missing in the Niagara River during a training exercise on Friday afternoon after days of searching, exhaustive efforts. You can see him right there. His body has been recovered. The K-9 officer, 9-year veteran of the force, the exhaustive search, the hours, the days, has finally come to an end. All right, there it is. The procession, Officer Craig Lehner's body brought from where it was located near the Niagara River, making its way up the 190 and to ECMC. And there is SHIELD, we mentioned. Lots of police dogs are there today, but SHIELD will be the only one allowed inside KeyBank Center.
You can hear the dogs barking in the background.
We are going to step aside here and let you see these images uninterrupted here on Spectrum News. Although it feels the world no longer respects the sacrifices we make, we shall not yield, we shall not falter. We will continue working toward a better tomorrow, carrying out the oaths we have taken. We continue to not only gaze into the abyss, but stare down its evils. Once more into the darkness, to quote a poem, once more into the fray. That from Officer Craig Lehner's human partner, Tommy Champion. Tough to come up with words to say right now, John, so I'll just kind of quote the words of Chief Dennis Richards earlier today, talking about the mother of Craig Lehner. Quote, "Kathy, thank you for giving the world Craig Lehner." That's what he said earlier today. Seems pretty fitting here, and amazing images we brought to you right here on Spectrum News.
Kickoff in Pennsylvania at noon on Saturday, and good for the guys over at Brockport. It's nice to see a real quarterback over at Brockport, unlike those teams in the 90s. Late 90s.
Well, no, early 2000s. I'm not that old, man. Come
All right,
on.
early 2000s.
2000 and 2001 is when I was there.
Coach, when are you going to let third string play?
I did get into a game that
All
was
right.
on Empire Sports.
You got to be psyched that Brockport's doing
I'm
it.
very psyched, and congratulations to Coach Mangoni. He was a little less bearded when I knew him. He was
All
my
right.
quarterback coach, an ex-quarterback himself. He was a pretty good one.
And you were fully bearded back then.
No,
Times
no,
have
I
changed.
could even do less of a beard than I do now. But Jason was great to me. Congratulations to Brockport, and we're cheering for him out here in Western New York for sure.
Yep.
Mike, it's remarkable, even on a wet day like this, Casey's hair still looks fantastic.
You know, when he made that comment about Alex's hair, I was starting to think, Casey, boy, I don't know. You kind of got some
pay
anchor
attention
hair
to
there
that
as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. Live at the top of 4, I'm Casey Bortnick. It's opening day in Major League Baseball. I've got my
I'm
Mets.
not a baseball person. I just can't get into it. But the Bisons did send us some nice gear.
Yeah, they sent you some
sent me
nice
some
gear.
nice gear.
Not me some nice gear. I'm Casey Bortnick.
And I'm Katie Gibbous.
It's a beautiful day out here. I'm sure you can see behind me lots of sun, and it's pretty hot out here. And Katie, I know like me, we're kind of susceptible to the sun, so I did bring my sunscreen out here today, and I've got these too. So that's pretty much what I'm wearing all day. Hopefully I don't get burned too bad, but you know, since you're the only one who's more susceptible to the sun than me, I think you understand where I'm coming from. Let's send it back to you.
Hopefully you don't end up looking like a tomato like I nearly did when I was out there Wednesday. Anchor Casey Bortnick for us at the Erie County Fairgrounds.
You know, Katie, I've often wondered how many hot dogs I could eat in some sort of competitive eating contest, maybe how many pieces of pizza I could eat. I don't know if I've ever wondered how much kale I could eat, but this is about what 8 competitors standing behind me right now are about to do. Let me get out of the way here. We are at the Erie County Fair, the 178th edition, and we are about to get this Kale Yeah eating competition underway. Some of the best competitive eaters in the world are here right now, including Joey Chestnut. Yes, he's in the middle there, right near where that trophy is, that green trophy with, of course, kale hanging out of it. And yeah, we're about to get underway. Let's listen. All right, this is crazy. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like this. We've got 8 minutes here. We're not going to carry all of this for you here on Spectrum News, but we want to give you a little flavor of the different techniques. Some people will go in with the water. I've seen Gatorade down on the end, Diet Pepsi in some cases to try to help them wash down all this kale, but it's kind of gross too at the same time, I think, but certainly a spectacle and certainly fun to watch. No idea basically how much kale I could eat in a competitive situation. Katie, I know you're a pretty healthy eater. Not sure how much kale you could put down in a competition like this, but yes, that is Joey Chestnut on the end. We have some competitors here here from Western New York as well. All this going on here at the 178th Erie County Fair. I gotta say it's pretty awesome, and I've covered some crazy things in my time, but I don't know if I've covered anything quite like this.